Hello. Today is Wednesday of the third week of Advent. We have the 3 Advent candles lit in the wreath. We're continuing Bartholomew's passage with the chapter titled Decca. Decca stared at Bartholomew from atop his horse. Bartholomew was nothing more than a bug to Decca, and he could tell the thief would squash him under his foot just for fun. "Well," Decca growled, "what's this secret?" Bartholomew's mind scrambled for an answer, but no great secret came to mind. He was trying to stall, of course, anything to give Nathan and Jotham time to get into the caves in the hills. Finally, Bartholomew looked at the rabbi, and that gave him an idea. "The Messiah is born!" he shouted at Decca. The rabbi looked shocked, but Decca just looked bored. He turned to his 2 henchmen and said, "Move out!" Bartholomew ran alongside the horsemen as they trotted through the compound, yelling, "No, wait! It is true! The Messiah is born, and he is here to show you God's love!" The 2 henchmen laughed, then kicked their horses into a gallop and rode out the back gate. Bartholomew stood in their dust, watching them go, and hoped he had delayed them long enough. Decca then ordered everyone to come out in the open of the compound, where he searched every face, while his other 2 henchmen searched every corner of every building. They didn't find what they were looking for, of course, and Decca seemed satisfied for the moment. All the monks and boys had to sit in the dirt then, under the hot sun, waiting for the men in the hills to return. Bartholomew looked at all the men sitting in the compound, as many as a good catch of fish. And then he looked at the 3 men who were guarding them, and he wondered why they didn't all just gang up on the thieves and tie them up. But none of the monks moved, so Bartholomew just sat and worried, his stomach feeling as if it were sick. First the Romans had taken his father and mother, and now some Jews were trying to kill his new father. Why does life have to be so full of hatred, he wondered. Sweat was running down Bartholomew's back, and stinging bugs flew around his head and bare arms. He kept looking at the pool in the middle of the compound, thinking he'd trade just about anything for a drink right about now. He was just about to suggest a rebellion to the monk sitting next to him when the sound of hoofbeats came from the hills behind him. A moment later, the 2 henchmen galloped through the gate and slid to a stop next to Decca. The 5 thieves stood in a circle, talking softly, and Bartholomew saw a look of disappointment cross Decca's face. Decca looked up at the sun, then around at the compound. He announced in a loud voice, "We will stay here for the night and in the morning resume our search." The news that the thieves would be staying made Bartholomew's heart sink. But the news that they would continue their search meant that they had not found Nathan and Jotham, and this made his heart sore. Decca ordered all monks and boys to go back to their work, which is what they did after lining up at the well to guzzle some water. Dinner that night was a long and silent affair, and even Bartholomew didn't say a word throughout the meal. The rabbi gave a short lesson and said the evening prayers right there at the table, and then everyone went straight to bed. Bartholomew couldn't sleep, though, worried as he was about his friends. He lay there staring out the window, asking Jehovah over and over to take care of Nathan and the new boy Jotham. Suddenly, a bright star appeared, brighter than any other star, brighter even than the moon. Bartholomew had never seen a star appear before. They always just hung in the night sky and did not move. He jumped up and stuck his head out the window, leaning far out and craning his neck to see this wondrous sight. He looked back in the dormitory room to see whom he might share this event with, but all the other boys were asleep. Jehovah, he whispered to the sky as he turned back to the window, if you can place a star like that in the heavens, then I think you can protect the lives of my friends. And with that, he quit worrying, lay down, and went to sleep. The sun had already risen when Bartholomew's eyes opened again, and he jumped up like a grasshopper. I missed the morning prayers, he thought, knowing his punishment would be great. But then he noticed that all the other boys were in the room as well, some of them sleeping, but most of them looking out the window. Bartholomew wedged himself in between Andrew and Jacob. He saw in the middle of the compound Decca and his 4 henchmen on their horses. Decca was talking to the rabbi. Forget not my warning, he was saying. Then louder he looked up, and spoke to all the men and boys hiding behind the doors and windows around the courtyard of the compound. Forget not that I will kill any man who helps the fool and the boy. With that, Decca and his henchmen heeled their horses into action and bolted through the front gate. With the rest of the boys, Bartholomew hurried out of the dormitory and up a ladder to the roof of the scriptorium, where they could see Decca riding south back toward En-Gedi. Now the whole community poured into the compound, everyone buzzing about the visit of Decca, and no one caring that they were talking before morning prayers. Even the rabbi was babbling on and on about Jehovah saving them. Finally, he called for attention. Jehovah has brought us through a terrible ordeal, he sang out. We shall gather in the prayer room for morning prayers to thank him properly. But first I must fetch our brethren who yet hide themselves in the library. Then, with his assistant following in step, the rabbi waddled out the back gate of Qumran toward the hills. A short time later he returned, red-faced and fuming, with Nathan and Jotham alongside. Nathan was just saying, Woe to the prophets of Israel who watch out only for themselves. And Bartholomew could tell they were in the middle of yet another debate about the boys. The rabbi turned purple and said, never mind, and then stomped off toward the prayer room. Nathan looked at the rabbi's assistant, who was scowling, and stuck out his tongue at him. The assistant was shocked, and then infuriated, and stomped off after the rabbi. Bartholomew ran over to Nathan and hugged him tightly. So did Andrew and Jacob and a dozen other boys, until it seemed as if Nathan would be crushed. I am so glad you are alive, Bartholomew said. I prayed to Jehovah for you, and for you, he said, looking at Jotham. All is well, Nathan said. Jehovah has indeed seen fit to watch over us. After morning prayers, a cold breakfast was served, and then everyone went to work. Jotham helped Bartholomew carry the new urns to the furnace. Then Bartholomew suggested a swim in the Sea of Death. You swim in the Sea of Death? Jotham gasped. Of course, Bartholomew replied. They are strange waters, but most enjoyable. You'll be safe. Jotham felt desire in 2 directions. To go swimming, but to stay as far away from the Sea of Death as possible. Finally, the first desire won out, and he agreed to go. But you must promise me I will come out alive, he told his friend. I promise, Bartholomew answered with a grin. But if you'd like, we can go ask the rabbi's assistant if the water is safe. Jotham looked horrified. No, I believe you, he said. I would not want to talk to that skunk-faced man. The 2 boys ran out the front gate, but before they got far, they were stopped by a call from Nathan. Jotham, I must talk to you, he said. Come swimming as soon as you can, Bartholomew told his friend, and then ran down to the shores of the Dead Sea. He stripped off his tunic and dove into the water, the salty brine cooling his sun-baked flesh. Andrew, Jacob, and several other boys joined him, and they laughed and splashed as they played Dunk the Donkey. A short time later, Bartholomew saw Nathan and Jotham walking toward the water's edge. "Jotham, come swimming," he invited. But then he noticed that his friend did not look very happy. If you don't have God on your side, if you're living in a selfish way and trying to be Lord of your own life, then it's probably a pretty good idea to cower in the shadows whenever trouble comes your way. After all, if you're trying to be your own God, the only power you have to call on when you need help is your own. For most of us, that's not a great deal of comfort. But if Jesus truly is Lord of your life, if you're trying your best to seek Him and follow Him and live His law of unselfish love, then you can face troubles boldly, knowing that God is with you no matter the outcome. That's not to say we should tempt evil or taunt the devil, but when faced with a situation that is dangerous or unpleasant or tempting, we can look it straight in the eye and know that God is in control. Like David fighting Goliath, we can stand tall and straight and say, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." We can say no when faced with temptations that we know are wrong. We can say no when asked to do something we don't believe is right. And we can say no when others try to hurt our friends and family. Bartholomew couldn't understand why dozens of monks just sat and let evil men hunt down their friend. So Bartholomew himself bravely took action. Whose faith was greater? Which will control your life, fear or faith?